That's great. Well, I'll give you one A. Hokan. How do you pronounce your name?
Yeah, now you speak
Okay. So, I want just to open with this. So, my grandfather had 10 kids. He had a third grade education. He came over from Ukraine. And he was, when he was not a short order cook at Boyd's Diner, he was a street corner preacher. And he had been raised Catholic and then found Jesus in a real way when he got to Philadelphia. So he would stand usually outside of a Catholic church and preach the gospel. And he was often harangued, and it was mortifying to my dad, who was the seventh of 10. And my dad would go to listen to his father preach, only to make sure that nobody heckled his dad. Now, he didn't let his father see that he was there. He was ashamed of his father, but he stood up for his father. And so if anybody gave any trouble, my dad was a very strong cat, he went out and cleared that guy out. So nobody heckled his father. So,
And the problem with that?
no, I didn't have a problem with that. So that was my dad, embarrassed of his father being a street corner preacher. Then, as my father grew into his life and into his faith, he met Jesus when he was 26. And by the time he was raising us, he was just, his two best friends were Job and St. John, and that he lived his life in the tension between all that grace and all that mystery and the pain of life and the difficulty of life. But essentially, from the time he was about 50, every day he street corner preached. Now, he street corner preached from cafes and diners, but like I said last night, who are you and what are you going to do about it? He knew the only thing to talk about every day was the resurrection. And he was blatant about it. And one day I saw him do that to another waitress, and I said, Dad, you turned out to be just like your dad. You're a street corner preacher. So at that point, I was about 28. So now I'm 53, and I've recognized in the last 5 years of my life that God has turned me into a street corner preacher. And I cannot get through any day without talking about Jesus. It's impossible. He always makes it happen. So as a beautiful shining example of this, my Swedish friends there, who I've seen one time before, I saw him at a party. Are you friends with Scott, or did you just...
Yeah,
okay.
he's a good friend.
So a mutual friend hosted a beer party on his roof. Taste different beers. A perfect setting for the Holy Spirit. So I attend this party, and I'm on my way to the party. I'm praying because I'm aware that I have not talked about Jesus with anybody that day. But I knew it. So I said, at this party, it's going to happen. I look forward to it. Just show up. Thank you, Lord. And I get there, and the party's going on for a while, and it's not happening. And then I get stuck in this conversation with this slightly tipsy Swedish guy. And at the start of the conversation, there are four of us. At the start of the conversation, I'm like, this is going to be it. Watch it drop in. And then it was about finance and this and that and travel. I was like, I got to get out of this conversation. This is not happening here. And then, out of the blue, Håkan says, you know what? I need a recommendation for a good church. Jesus dropped into the center of the conversation. All of a sudden, these other guys are like, church? Then we're talking about church, and I'm talking about church, and I'm talking about my faith, and this other guy's I'm an atheist. And then that was the next 45 minutes, was talking about the Lord. So, how sweet it is. You were the man to do that on that day, and now we're going to be friends. I love you too. See, Jesus is everywhere.
You forgot the pizza. The pizza was
I didn't have any pizza. I'm in my heartburn years. This is my beloved brother and friend, Chip Roper. You won't meet a finer man, so we're lucky to have this guy right here.
Thank you, man. Yep. Great. You're here. NCS Manhattan for me, guys, and great to be with you. Todd, it's awesome for you to be with us. We're psyched about that. Tell us about story. Tell us about, what are just the basic components of any story?
Well, everything has to be a page turner. Somebody just brought up Elf, and the reason Elf has stuck around is that we held it to the same strictures of any drama that we develop, which is every story needs to be a page turner. Every story, you don't know what's going to happen next. That's what makes being alive interesting. And the two best things about being a human being are also the two worst. One is we don't know what's going to happen next, and the other is we don't know what's going to happen next. And so how you perceive that And someone was talking last night, I think Kurt, about in a novel, a good novel, you get frustrated because you want to know. There's too much, like, plates are spinning, and how does it all come together? I think the most important thing to recognize in story, when you're in the hands of great storytelling in a movie, you tend to rest back knowing that all the complications are going to be weaved together by the author. And they're going to leave you with something, a thrill, an understanding. The fable will have an answer, there'll be wisdom. There are very few movies that we love that leave us with a sad feeling at the end. But some of those can be great instigators. I don't know, there are many folks that are close to my age, so I think you would know 3 Days of the Condor. You remember the movie with Robert Redford in the 70s? The younger generation, if you haven't seen it, you must see it. It's perfect storytelling. But there's a movie, and I won't give it away, that does all the rules of man against the impossible, man with the wrong set of skills, finally somehow pulling off alone a victory. And the last moment of the film is, did you really win? Did you? Ask yourself, did you really win? And that's what you're left with in the audience. Now that movie was made in the mid-70s, where for the first time there was a real questioning of America. What are our values? Can you trust in the Constitution? Can you trust that the right thing will be done? So it was a perfect time for that. It's okay for a story to disturb you. And often many of the stories that Jesus teaches are they're pebbles in the water, and you got to deal with the ripples. And he keeps saying, like, hey, people don't see. If you could open your eyes all the way back to Isaiah, it's right in front of you. The story is so clear, and yet God chose to make it mysterious, to give us 800 years before Christ, Isaiah being completely overt and obvious on the other side of what we now believe. But if you were hearing that or reading that for the first time, in the middle of everything else he's saying, he drops these bombs of prediction, such specific prediction about the coming of Christ, it would have been confounding. And you're not around 800 years later. If you're Isaiah's best friend, you're like, dude, bad story. Totally interrupted the flow. I was down with we're all terrible, we're all going to go, but someone's dying for us? What is this? You got to edit that out. So God's story is better than all our stories. But great storytelling does have rules, and this is the thing when I talk to young screenwriters. You have to learn all the rules before you're allowed to break them. And usually the viewpoint of someone who's young and trying to write movies is that they've seen a movie that they love that broke all the rules. And it was the one independent movie or the one outlier out there. And they're like, hey, that guy did it, I can do it, and then I'll win an award and I'll be special. But what they share has no form. And it doesn't follow any of the rules, so it never gets read. Because they haven't passed the test of basic architecture.
What are some of the rules?
Well, I'll answer that in 1 second. But the main thing is, if you cannot show that you can do the architectural plan, because screenwriting is, a book is the whole story, but screenwriting is the architectural plan. It's the blueprint, so people can move into it. If it doesn't appear that wall is going to hold, or that a car can fit in that garage, if the shape is not there when you read it, you know it can never be a movie. And it takes a long time to get it reshaped. There's a lot of erasing of the blueprint as you go. The rules of story, to me, you just have to have an inciting incident. You have to have something occur to your hero that changes the direction of their life. You've got to have rising action, which is moving you in a direction that you think is going to allow the audience to guess, oh, I know what's happening. They took a left there because they got to go to New Mexico. Like, aha. And then what happens is you have, this is very important in screenwriting, you need a false goal. So the false goal is Johnny knows he needs to get to his mom before the bomb goes off. That's the false goal. But what he discovers along the way is he meets, it's so hard to say your name without feeling I'm saying it wrong. Hookan.
You can call me Bob if you want to.
Call you what?
Bob.
Bob, that's good.
What about Bob?
Like a French coffee.
So, on the way to New Mexico, he runs into Bob, and Bob has the secret to his life. And so now he has to decide, I've been looking for this thing my whole life, Bob has it, but it means Mama gets blown up. What do I do? And so you ask, and the audience asks, which is the false goal? Was the first goal a false goal? Oh, no, maybe it's not. Maybe this is about Mom comes first, And the secret of my life, I'll figure that out later. And you can go different roads. But the key is, you have, and sometimes you set up multiple false goals for the hero to overcome. There are solo hero stories like Rocky, where he has some help around him, but it's pretty much him. But then there are team hero stories like Saving Private Ryan, which is a great example. It's a beautifully rendered script where you get to know each of the individuals, even guys that have 6 or 7 lines, the medic, or people that we lose. It breaks our heart because they feel fully human.
Right.
And it's about a guy we don't even meet until 4/5 into the movie. Now there's a false goal. That's a perfect false goal movie. Save Private Ryan. They find him. Here he is. You're released. You're ordered to be released, and he refuses to go. Right? So that's a beautiful, unexpected twist. So we want to be held, we want to be led, and we want to believe that we're going to be right about the story when we're experiencing it. But master storytelling is flipping the script at the last minute and having it be legit. Instead of just a surprise ending for surprise ending, you sowed the seeds all the way along, so it's like, aha! And especially, everyone's so sophisticated in the story now, by being a viewer and there's so much content, that feeling if you can trick the audience now, then you've really got a winner.
What was the false goal in Sully?
Well, the false goal in Sully is, I would say, is outside of the movie, which is everybody that thought they knew what had happened. That the false goal belonged to the viewer and to the consumer, and all the backlash. I was told this after the fact because I spent no time, and I'm not kidding, 0 time reading reviews on social media, comments about anything. I know nothing about anything in my career except what I've done. I don't know what the world thinks of it, except when people come up and say, nice job, and it moved them, which is beautiful and a blessing. That's a black hole to be Googling yourself. Never Google yourself.
I Googled some of you guys. Don't Google yourself.
Did anyone Google themselves last night in the hotel alone? Away from their family?
What's that search history tell you about yourself?
Are we still talking about the internet?
These titles will not appear in your hotel bill. So everybody thought, I heard after the fact from friends, everybody thought, hey, what happened? The guy landed the plane, there were some geese, it took a couple of minutes, there's no movie there. But what they didn't know is what I knew, and it wasn't even in Sully's book, is that for 15 months, the NTSB tried to pin it on Sully.
Yeah.
Now,
That was a surprise to me because
when I say pin it on Sully,
That was really
there are multiple things here. They were doing their job, but they did their job in a way that precluded a sense of what I would consider real justice. Because yes, we have the hearings, I have all the transcripts, and I know all the stuff that was on the record. But for 15 months, they called Sully constantly. They called Skiles, they called them together, they called them alone, and there are no transcripts of any of this. And they just wanted, what did you do again? When did you flip on the APU? How did that happen? Oh, let's go back over that. Why did you make that decision? Again and again and again. And he lost 35 pounds. I had to collapse 15 months into 3 days. I was joking with somebody the other day. He was like, but is that authentic? And I said, well, if you want a movie with 7 lawn mowing montages, great, I'll give you 15 months. We can take our time. But if you want a movie that's tightly constructed, you got to collapse time. But over those 15 months, he wasn't allowed to fly, so they didn't have any money. They almost lost their house. He lost all this weight. He had PTSD, increasingly certain he made the wrong choice when he started so sure. So that is thrilling. And man versus machine. And the ACAR, I don't know if people have seen it, but the ACAR's data supported what the NTSB said, and they also had support from the simulations. And it wasn't until Sully, well into the process, realized that they were not taking into account the human factor, and there was no delay. And that changed everything. So nobody knew that. So I got to do to an audience truly a magic trick, because they went in, I think those who went, because it wasn't a slow build, the movie was successful right out of the gate, but those who went to see Tom Hanks in a Clint Eastwood movie. And I think their expectation was, oh, this will be solid. But nobody knew they were going to be surprised, which was really fun for me.
I thought when you first told me about it, I thought it was a survival movie, but it's not a survival movie. It's about that whole questioning of his judgment afterwards and the ordeal of that. And it was really,
and also man versus machine, which is why Clint wanted to do it, because he's always had that conversation in his movies. And if you take out the human element all the way back to Outlaw Josie Wales, I don't know if you looked at that recently. Oh, it's such an extraordinary film. And that was the beginning of his directing career. But just that conversation is straight out of Deuteronomy. The conversation he has with the Indian chief, where they're standing side by side. He's like, well, we could do what we think is right, and we could kill each other. We could all be dead. Maybe one of us rides away. Or we could choose life. It's a beautiful scene, and they chose life.
Talk about the difference between propaganda and truth-telling when it comes to story, especially Christian story.
Propaganda, that's a weighted word.
It is.
Hopefully I've never trafficked in propaganda. I would just say around the notion of what are considered Christian films. It's not what I traffic in. My experience of those it's not that they're made by people of ill intention, but we go back to how you become a storyteller and the fact that it's a craft and obeying the rules. You have to get good at something if you're going to represent something. If you, let's say Purdue University, and there are 7 guys that love Purdue, but they can't dribble a basketball. They're not going to represent Purdue University's basketball team, which will represent the university, which will give generational pride. And grandfathers will call their grandkids, and the game is on. This all comes from excellence. And I feel like a lot of times in the Christian world, the goal is message first, excellence last. And of course what that does is it tramples the message, and the only people that really can engage with that material are people that are so desperate for any breadcrumb, they'll forgive all the lack of excellence because they think that message has meaning. And it may certainly have meaning for them, but it's not going to have meaning outside the private language of evangelicalism or whatever the point of view is trying to be made. And there's no surprise if there's an altar call at the end of every movie and the hero is won over, then why do you go to the movie? You know that story. You could sit at a coffee shop and hear it from your friend. What makes it a movie? So excellence, I would say, is the difference between propaganda and good storytelling. And also, people know what's true.
Right.
I mean, Sully's a true story. Elf is a true story. Also, a lot of people don't know that. People recognize what is true. Rocky is fictional. Rudy is non-fictional. But we recognize ourselves in both. And everybody does. Because in some way, maybe not everyone's small, wants to be on a team, or someone's a great boxer but nobody believes in him. But everybody has that feeling of, if I had my one shot, if somebody saw me as I really was, then I would have this chance to succeed. That's why those movies resonate. The genius of the message of the gospel is somebody did see Nathaniel under the fig tree. I like to think about, I know what Zacchaeus was thinking when he climbed up, because he wasn't expected to be called down, but he wanted to be part of this action. He wanted to see like a parade. Something new was in town, and it was worth witnessing. He didn't know his life was going to be turned upside down. But imagine if you're Nathaniel and you're just chilling under the fig tree. You haven't seen a miracle. You haven't been told, drop your nets and follow me. You haven't seen all the fish pulled in. You haven't seen anything. You're just a dude hanging out. And you get word that you gotta come here, and it's all different. I talk about an inciting incident. I wish we had the gospel of Nathaniel, because I'd love to know what his personal experience was. I just have to imagine it. Maybe I'll write that next.
That's good.
I have a question. What Christian films, or can you name one that you think was pretty excellent, did a good job of telling the story, etc.?
I would say, you mean Christian, made by a Christian studio?
Or
I mean, you want to talk, the studios have made incredible Christian movies. Ben-Hur, A Man for All Seasons, which is just perfect. Chariots of Fire won Best Picture. Those are made by studios. They told the truth about the people and their faith, and that's why it resonated, because they were excellent movies. Pure Flix made The Case for Christ is solid. It's not remarkable, but it's solid, and it stands above their other work. Woodlawn is a good movie. That's pretty good. But in general, I wouldn't say that I've experienced a movie made by a Christian studio that I was recommending.
Do guys, what about us as guys blocks us sometimes from unpacking the value of story and the power of story?
Jeez, I don't know. Story's been my whole life, and I'm a guy. I would say the thing that I experienced most, and this is not true of the human beings in this room because you guys came here looking for something, open to things, but in general, most conversations that you're going to have are going to be in a bar, and that's the one place where I see guys baton pass the code of sports and movies, and they keep doing that until they build enough of a relationship to get to the room. And sometimes that takes the third Guinness. I mean, a lot of guys that I know don't feel permission or feel very uncomfortable with getting intimate emotionally quickly. So there's still stuff, I've been friends with guys for 25 years, you still feel the ice slowly breaking around certain topics.
What do you think that is?
Maybe it's connected to that woundedness that Ian talked about last night. I mean, I'm not saying across the board, but certainly if you weren't told that you were special and that you were loved. I happen to have an embarrassment of riches with my parents. Their ability to see my sisters and I as individuals and always be interested in our story, and to say to me when I decided to go into the arts, when everybody else said, okay, that's super, when are you coming back to get a real job? They were like, this is what you want to do? We're gonna pray for it, and it's God's plan. So they always supported it. And for my dad to say, I never told you this, Todd, but to be able to see your name on a book or your name on the screen is the highest moment of me being your dad. But he never said that to me.
You never did.
Until after it occurred. The thing for me that moves me the most is a little bit of a tangent back to my street corner preacher grandfather. But the thing that motivates me every day, on the days when I want to take a nap, or I want to check out, or when I don't want to put in full effort, is that my grandparents, when they were 16, got on the bottom of a ship in Ukraine and came across the world. They had 10 kids. My grandfather with a third grade education, my grandmother illiterate in both her birth language and English, signed X for anything she had to sign, that their grandson was published and produced in the language of the country they came to. That has nothing to do with me. Now I know this is all Jesus anyway, but man, straight up, draw a line, you don't need faith to see, that has nothing to do with me at all. My opportunity to build chairs, which is what I call screenwriting. I used to make really, really, really bad chairs with 2.5 legs and they always fell over, but now at 53 I'll make you a good chair. My opportunity to build chairs is solely on the back of their courage. So I would inspire or instigate you guys within the story of your life that whatever you do individually is generationally impactful. So the more brave, the more spectacular, the more intimate, the more daring, every single thing you do impacts the kids that are watching. Your nieces, your nephews, your kids, your grandkids, the neighbors' kids. That there is this wave that goes out from you daring to dream or daring to be as excellent and fully yourself as God has called you to be.
That's great. How can we lean into our own stories more deeply?
I think everybody should write. I really do. I don't think everybody should write a book. I don't think everybody's got a book in him. Bob has 11 books in him. He wins this room right here. Give an applause for a man with 11 published books. My hand gets tired just thinking about that. It's a lot. It's a big number. But not everybody has a book in them. But everybody has words and thoughts and stuff to dig out. The archaeological work that comes when you just sit down and write. It doesn't have to be your story. It can be what you thought about the day. It can be angry. It became very female somehow to keep a diary. That girls have their thoughts. It's like, well, guys have their thoughts too. And we may run from them, or they may be harder to access. But there's so much fruit in tilling that soil and finding out. It could be old wounds. It could be. For me, primarily, I'm interested in you guys finding out undreamed dreams. That there's something that you always wanted to do, no matter what age you are, and you never did. You were afraid to do. You were afraid to say out loud. My dream is to be a baton twirler. Oh no, it doesn't matter. If your real dream is in there and God implanted it, because God's not a prankster. God did not create you to be who you are so that you would be disappointed. The problem in our culture is we're so results oriented that we think there's a straight line, and especially in the movies. People think screenwriting and getting in the movies is like a scratcher ticket. You know, you come up with one great story and then it changes everything, you get $1 million check, and it's not like that.
It's not one great story, is it? It's many.
Well, no, it's many and it's a craft. But once in a while there's a story in the paper about that, but that's not real. What is real is if you love movies, it doesn't mean you're going to be Steven Spielberg, but it could certainly mean that you have a life in the movies and that you wind up producing movies or being on sets or working in casting or where you don't know where God's going to put you. But if movies break your heart and it's your favorite thing and all you think about is movies, you probably should be in the movie business. That's not so bad. And and it is a business. And definitely with AI and everything that's coming, we were talking about this yesterday at the Media Tech Thing, that what are the future jobs? It's not going to be a problem for Jamie and I, but the future jobs in the next 30 years, the things that robots can't do. Robots can't storytell. They got no past, and everything, any skill they would have would be borrowed, and it would be in the same way that they still can't get eyes right. This is the thing that in animation, no matter how real they get to these characters, they can't get the eyes right. I don't know if you saw trailers for Alita, Battle Angel. I honestly think that because they can't get the eyes right, that movie was not the success that it could have been. Because you're like, there's no believability. Of course she's been created. Of course she's a robot, so why would I rally to her cause? If she really looked like a real girl, I think it would be better if they cast a real actress instead of made it CGI. People would have been more moved. So stuff robots can't do, we can do. Holy Spirit action. This is what we should be doing and concentrating on and thinking about for generations. That and plumbing and electrician. That's it. That's all it's going to be left. I'm not kidding, guys. That's what's going to be left. I had a chat with our elevator repairman a year or so ago, and I was taking the kids to school, and he said, "Stay in school" to the kids, and I just stopped because it's a generic thing to say, but for some reason, it's like, okay, you don't know my kids, and they're good in school. Why are you saying they stay in school? And so I just said, why do you say that? And he said, well, I dropped out in 10th grade, and I've always regretted it. I said, that's legit. How long have you been elevator repair guy? Oh, 30 years, and it's my own company. And what about your son? Is your son? He said, oh yeah, he's gonna come work for me too. And I said, so all the money you saved on college, plus you're an elevator repair guy in New York City. You guys have a killer union. Like, you're doing really well, aren't you? And he was like, yeah. So I turned to my kids and I said, the message is, drop out of school. They were like, woo!
That is great. I think one of the things you said as a takeaway, guys, is that we all need to be writing, because through the iterative process of reflection, we're going to discover more and more of who we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I see that in the people that I coach too. It's iterative. They have to be engaged, and writing really, really helps us do that. So we're going to
just write your own story, because what I get often is, I've got a great story. Would you tell it? And you wind up feeling like the dermatologist at a party. and people are coming up like, I got this rash. And I'm like, I don't know you. I don't want to look at your rash. It's true. If someone has taken the time to write their story, and what I say to them if they have a real script is I say, listen, you get one chance in this business pretty much. Is it absolutely the best it could possibly be? Have you broken your back over this? Is it extraordinary? Do you have multiple professionals who agree that it's worth sending? Or do you just want me to, say, tag you're it, and it all works out for you? What do you want? And inevitably, people say, it's not ready. So I say, after you have broken yourself over it, and you can do no more, then we do receive unagented material at my company. It gets read by my guys, and if it's really special, then it gets read by me. But the last thing you want to turn in to my guys is something that they read 10 pages of and call me and say, unreadable. Because that's it. And I've had people do that to me and then say, okay, you hate it, but can you recommend me to some other producers? Hey, Jimmy, I got a really crappy script for you. Let me send it over to help this guy achieve his dream. No, you're not going to recommend something that's bad to anybody. So just because you wrote a story doesn't make it good. Or the story could be great, but it's not executed well. But it's like any craft. We can't be naive about it. I can't plumb. I can't do, I can't build. To me, if you want to scare the daylights out of me, give me something to put together that has instructions. For whatever reason, I'm missing that gene and I lock up. But if you say to me, we need 20 fresh pages in the next 12 hours to shoot, like rock and roll. A lot of people would not feel comfortable with that. They're like, I'll build the shelf, But that's okay. We all need each other. We shelf builders and writers, and we all need each other. But the pursuit of greatness, the pursuit of excellence, where in our lives are we doing that? First of all, we should be doing that in our spiritual walk. Is that the first goal? Because when you set that as your direct plug-in, then you have a chance that everything else will be filtered through that lens and that experience. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, whatever your craft or the thing that's in front of you for the day, loving your wife, your children, your buddies, you're putting a swing set together, you're helping your pal roof, whatever it is, how often do we apply the focus of excellence to that task? Usually, we're not present for it. Usually, we're doing the work, and we're like, oh yeah, I got the bills to pay, and then on Tuesday, Sally's got the thing, and we miss our lives because we don't pay attention to the thing we're doing. And guess what? You can't be great at something, you can't be excellent at something if you're not paying attention to it. There's Bull Durham is a classic film, and Crash Davis is having this great year, and he steps into the batter's box, and he can't stop thinking about Susan Sarandon. And he's like, get the broad out of your head, get the broad out of your head, strike one. And he winds up striking out because all he can think about is the girl. But when he goes in and he does, I was a baseball player in college, and this is the rules, you learn all the mechanics, you drill, and then you step into the batter's box and you forget everything. Only because you're ready and you clear your head. And so in writing and storytelling and anything, if we really work hard and then we really stay present, we have a chance for greatness.
That's great. Let's take a few questions, guys. Questions, not paragraphs. Okay? Not like long introductions. A question is a sentence with a little squirrely thing at the end. So, you had your hand up earlier.
Thank you so much. My name is Biggs.
Biggs?
Yes.
You win.
Todd is like, my name is Todd.
It's a name shame.
So, first rule, disobeying your
That didn't take long.
Yeah. Where's the trapdoor?
So I have a story actually which I was already almost finishing a contract with a major publisher in this country, in New York City. But I wrote my story as a Christian as something that has the hand of God in it,
Sure.
which I believe. And the publisher, towards the end, after giving me actually some money, wanted me to implant in some lies, and that was eating my.
What was he asking you to implant?
We didn't want. Okay, part of my story is I am an immigrant in this country, and 2 years into living in the US, I started a small business, landscaping business, and I went door knocking on Capitol Hill in Washington DC, and one of the people I came across who hired me is a guy who puts on 2 shirts and a jacket on top and shorts.
What's that?
That's called Steve Bannon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I worked with him as his de facto chief of staff. So it's a long
Okay, but the publisher wanted you to put in lines that were not true?
Yes.
Okay, in order to go after that
Yes.
gentleman?
Yeah.
To impugn him?
Yes.
Okay.
And who is already down anyway.
Okay. And you said no?
I said no.
No is the only power we have. No is a good word.
Yes.
We hear it all the time. I really want to talk about that disappointment thing we
Yes.
talked about last night.
Oh,
Let's not
yeah.
forget.
We'll
So
talk about
that
it.
meant that the deal was going to go down
Yep.
right away, which I was like, it's okay to come up with a date to pay you, a plan to pay you,
Yeah.
than to continue with something that.
I totally agree.
But when I read it, and some people who have read it, including other publishers, most of whom are not Christian publishers, it's a great story, and I believe given to the right publisher
Well, listen, the fact is, this is what we're going to talk about. I'll bring this in now.
Yeah.
The fundamental thing that happens in a writer's life is disappointment. It's nonstop, it's perpetual. I've been working, this is my only job in my entire life, 30 years, writing movies and books. And my rejection numbers run somewhere between 98% of the time and 90% of the time. That's it, man. All you hear is no. My second novel, my first novel came out, my second novel never got published, my third novel was turned down by 27 publishers. Who knows what God's doing? If you want your story out, it'll come out. And it'll be the right place. What you have to do is hang on to yourself. Because if you lose your word, you lose your soul.
Yeah.
What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his true self, his soul, his true self? You only get one of those, and if you trade that in, you will suffer. Maybe not immediately, but probably immediately, and then you will definitely suffer in the long term. But this disappointment thing is so important. Yes, that sounds painful, but it actually makes my life so much easier to link up with what we're called to do in our spiritual walk. Because most people, life is not mostly disappointing. Most people, if they have a skill set and they fall in love and they have a job and they climb up that ladder, and obviously tragedy happens, but I would say for most people, their life is mostly good with some disappointments in there. That makes it really hard to stay on your knees. It makes it really hard to be desperately hungry every day for Jesus Christ. It just does. It's numbing. Like sweetness, goodness can be numbing. And you look at the Israelites, and I used to, when I was young, I was like, how could they, 10 minutes after God blessed them, boom, idols. Yeah, that was me all day, every day. I'm doing that every day. So my need to cling to the cross goes in direct line with what happens to me every day. So it makes my life way easier. So I've really been trying to help talk about this, that oftentimes when someone speaks from a point of success or something in the culture, there's this idea that somehow they got out of the boat and got on land. Everybody else is still on boat. And from land, I'm like, land's awesome, and you can be on land too. And it's completely a lie. It has nothing to do with that. This happens to be what I was called to do, and I'm blessed and I enjoy it. But absolutely, being in touch with disappointment, being in touch with not having any concern with result, divorcing oneself from result, wanting only what God wants, is so freeing. And we all can seek that. It's harder for you guys.
Guys, we're just at the end. So here's the deal. Two things.
How can we be at the end?
We're supposed to be done in 5 minutes ago.